The sky above the battlefield was a swirl of fire and smoke, colors no human could name. The stars seemed distant, tiny and cold, as if the universe watched silently. Captain Yarrick Hale stood at the front of the human forces, his armor scorched in places, his face streaked with sweat and dust. The battle had been going for hours, and it was far from over. On the horizon, the alien invaders' warships hovered like dark birds, and their soldiers moved with mechanical precision. They were stronger, faster, and more numerous than the humans. But Yarrick knew something they did not. Human courage was unpredictable. He raised his hand, signaling a squad to follow him through a broken valley. The ground shook under the explosions, and a high-pitched screech echoed as alien artillery fired nearby. He did not flinch. His eyes were sharp, scanning the battlefield for weaknesses. "Remember," he shouted, "we fight for survival. We fight for home. Stay with me, and we can turn this fight." The soldiers behind him were tired, exhausted from days without rest. Yet, there was a spark in their eyes, a spark Yarrick had nurtured for years. They believed in him, and he believed in them. He led them through the chaos, weaving between fallen machines and debris, until they reached the alien command post. "This is it," he muttered. "Hit their center, and they will fall apart." The plan was risky. It required splitting the forces into two groups. One would attack the command post directly, drawing attention, while the other would sneak through a hidden path and disable the energy shield that protected the alien fleet. Yarrick chose the second path. As they moved, he felt the familiar rush of adrenaline. Fear existed, yes, but fear was a tool, a fire to sharpen one's focus. He crouched behind a ruined wall and watched alien patrols move in patterns he had studied carefully. Timing was everything. One wrong step, and all would be lost. Hours passed in tense silence, punctuated by distant explosions. Finally, they reached the shield control station. Yarrick gave the signal, and his team began their work. The alien technology was unlike anything humans had seen. Lights blinked in strange sequences, and the machines seemed alive. Yet, Yarrick's hands moved with steady confidence. He had trained for this moment, studied alien systems, and trusted his instincts. "Almost there," whispered Lieutenant Mara, his second in command. "We can do this." With a final adjustment, the shield went down. The alien fleet's ships suddenly became vulnerable, and from the human lines, a wave of energy blasts struck, crippling their armada. Explosions lit the sky like fireworks. Alien soldiers were thrown into chaos. Yarrick and his team watched as the tide of battle shifted, but victory was not yet complete. A group of elite alien soldiers broke through the battlefield, heading straight for Yarrick. He did not panic. With calm precision, he led his squad against them. The fight was brutal, a mix of human grit and alien technology. Yarrick moved with purpose, striking and dodging, each movement saving his team from certain death. Hours felt like minutes, and finally, the aliens retreated. When the smoke cleared, the battlefield was a scene of devastation. Broken machines, scorched earth, and fallen soldiers, both human and alien, were everywhere. Yarrick stood among them, chest heaving, eyes scanning the horizon. His forces had won, against all odds. Humans had survived where many thought they would fail. Later, in the aftermath, the alien council approached. These were not soldiers, but the rulers of the enemy's civilization. They were tall, with translucent skin and eyes that glowed faintly. Their movements were deliberate, their expressions unreadable. "You have fought well, human," one of them said, voice echoing in a way that sounded almost musical. "Beyond what we expected." Yarrick straightened, wiping sweat and blood from his face. "I did what I had to," he said simply. The council conferred among themselves in a language that sounded like wind through crystal. Finally, the leader spoke again. "As a reward for your bravery and skill, you may choose one of our princesses to be your companion. She will serve with honor and wisdom, and her presence will strengthen the bond between our worlds." Yarrick blinked. He had expected gold, weapons, maybe a medal. Not this. Princesses were offered to warriors in their culture as symbols of gratitude and alliance. The council's finest were all standing nearby, all radiant and skilled in ways humans could hardly imagine. Every one of them was admired across their galaxy for beauty, intelligence, or power. Yet, his eyes did not linger on the obvious choices. Instead, they found a quiet figure at the edge of the group. Princess Leora stood slightly apart, her posture hesitant, her expression calm but curious. Her attire was simple, her hair not adorned like the others. The court whispered and laughed softly. She was known as the least admired princess, overlooked and underestimated by her family and peers. The council noticed his gaze. Murmurs rose, but Yarek ignored them. There was something about Leora that intrigued him, not her beauty or status, but the intelligence he saw flicker in her eyes. She did not try to impress, she did not flaunt her skills. Yet there was a quiet strength in her demeanor. "I choose her," Yarek said firmly. The words hung in the air, clear and unwavering. Gasps echoed through the court. The council seemed stunned. "You do not understand," the leader said. "The other princesses, I understand perfectly," Yarek interrupted. "I choose someone real, someone I can trust. That is more important than fame or appearances." Leora looked at him then, her eyes widening slightly. For a moment, she said nothing. Then a small, almost shy smile appeared. You are different," she said softly. The council shook their heads but accepted his choice. In their culture, a hero's decision was respected, even if it seemed strange. And so, Leora stepped forward. She did not move with arrogance or entitlement, but with quiet dignity, offering her hand to the human soldier. When their hands met, Yarek felt a sense of certainty he could not explain. This was not just a reward, not just a princess. They were about to begin a journey that would change both their lives, and perhaps the galaxy itself. That evening, as the sun set over the shattered battlefield, Yarek and Leora walked together. The air was thick with the scent of scorched metal and blooming alien flora. He spoke little, letting the silence speak for them both. Leora seemed to study everything around her, noting the scars of war, the bravery of humans, and the strange resilience that allowed them to survive. "You did well today," she said finally, her voice calm but carrying weight. "Not everyone could have done what you did." Yarek shrugged. "I had a good team, and a reason to fight." She tilted her head, curious. "And the reason?" "Home, family, the people who depend on me," he said. "That is enough reason to do anything." Leora nodded slowly. There was a thoughtfulness in her eyes, a depth that made him realize how much potential had been hidden behind her quiet presence. Most of her family had dismissed her, never seeing what lay beneath. But Yarek could see it clearly now: the intelligence, the courage, and the compassion. As night fell, they set up camp amidst the ruins. Fires burned softly, casting long shadows across the shattered landscape. The sounds of distant battle had faded, replaced by the hum of alien insects and the quiet murmur of the wind. Yarek lay back, staring at the stars, thinking about what was to come. He had chosen the least admired princess, defying expectation, and he felt no regret. For the first time in his life, he realized that true value was never about appearances, power, or fame. True value was about courage, loyalty, and heart. And in Leora, he saw all of those qualities and more. Tomorrow, their journey would begin. Together, they would face challenges neither of them could yet imagine. But for now, under the alien sky, a human soldier and a quiet princess shared a moment of peace, one that would mark the start of a story that could change the galaxy forever. The stars stretched endlessly above as Captain Yarek Hale and Princess Leora left the battlefield behind. Their ship, a sleek human vessel adapted for alien travel, moved silently through the void, cutting past asteroids and distant nebulae. For the first time since the war began, Yarek allowed himself a moment of quiet. Leora, sitting across from him, observed the stars with calm curiosity. "This universe is bigger than I imagined," she said softly, her fingers brushing the edge of the console. "I always knew there were worlds beyond our own, but I never thought I would see them." Yarek nodded. "It's vast, and it can be dangerous, but that's what makes it worth exploring." Leora smiled faintly. "You humans are brave and stubborn. I admire that," he chuckled. "Sometimes stubbornness is all that keeps us alive." The journey to Leora's homeworld was not simple. Even after the war, regions of space remain unstable. Rogue factions, pirate ships, and remnants of the alien forces still threaten travelers. Yorick piloted the ship with precision, his eyes scanning the sensors for signs of trouble. He had trained for combat, but space navigation required a different kind of patience, careful observation, timing, and quick thinking. After several hours, an alert flashed on the console. A small band of alien raiders had detected them and were moving to intercept pirates. Yorick muttered, "Looks like we have company." Leora leaned forward. "What will we do?" "We fight if we have to, but we tried to outsmart them first." Yorick activated the ship's cloaking system, a risky maneuver that could fail if the pirates were skilled. The ship shimmered and faded from sight. Moments later, the raiders scanned the area, confused by the sudden disappearance. Using the opportunity, Yorick steered the vessel into a nearby asteroid field. The pirates pursued, weaving dangerously between massive rocks and debris. Yorick's hands moved over the controls with practiced skill, and Leora followed his lead, watching his every move. "You are fearless," she said, almost in awe. "I'm careful," Yorick corrected. "Fearless is running straight into trouble without thinking." "I just don't let fear control me." Leora nodded thoughtfully. "I see. You are strong, not just in body but in mind. Most of my people underestimate strength like that by carefully navigating the asteroids." Yorick led the pirates into a trap. A large rock shifted with his guidance, and the pirate ship collided with it, sending sparks and smoke into space. They were forced to retreat. Leora's eyes widened as she watched the scene unfold. "You did that?" she asked. "I did. But the rocks did most of the work," he said, smiling. She laughed softly. It was the first time Yorick had heard her laugh, and it warmed him more than he expected. For a quiet, underestimated princess, she had a spark that no one had seen before. He was beginning to understand why he had chosen her, and why it felt so right. Hours turned into days as the ship traveled deeper into alien space. Leora asked countless questions about human culture, about the war, about how Yorick had survived so many battles. He answered with honesty, sometimes smiling at her curiosity, sometimes pausing as he remembered painful memories. "You humans are different from what I imagined," Leora said one evening, as the ship floated near a glowing nebula. "You fight, yes, but not just for power or glory. You fight for each other. That is rare in my world." Yorick looked at her. "It's what keeps us alive. Family, friends, people who depend on us. That is the reason to fight. Not honor, not money, not fame." Leora seemed to absorb this. She nodded, staring at the swirling colors outside the window. "Perhaps that is why I was overlooked. I did not seek attention. I observe, I learn, I help where I can. And yet, no one notices until something important happens." Yorick smiled. "Sometimes, being unnoticed is a gift. You see things others miss." Their journey was not without danger. On the third day, a sudden meteor storm forced the ship into evasive maneuvers. Rocks of burning metal crashed around them, shaking the vessel violently. Yorick's hands were steady, adjusting shields and thrusters with skill born of countless battles. Leora assisted, reading sensors and relaying data, her calm voice steady even as alarms blared. "You handle this well," she said, impressed. "Experience," Yorick replied, "and the refusal to panic. You'll notice humans are good at that. When panic spreads, someone has to stay calm." The ship emerged from the storm battered but intact. They shared a quiet moment, realizing how much they relied on each other. Leora's quiet wisdom had saved them as much as Yorick's combat skill. They were beginning to form a partnership, one built on trust, not fear or obligation. When the ship finally entered the orbit of Leora's homeworld, she gasped. The planet was vast and beautiful, with sprawling forests, crystal-clear rivers, and mountains that reached into the clouds. Cities of light shimmered across the surface, a mixture of technology and natural beauty. "This is my world," Leora said softly, awe in her voice. "You will see. It is beautiful, but full of politics, tradition, and expectations. You must be careful here." Yorick nodded. "I know. I've fought battles, but politics. That is another war altogether." as they descended toward the capital. Leora explained the customs and hierarchy of her people. Her family, while powerful, had dismissed her because she did not conform to their expectations. She had ideas that challenged tradition and a gentle way of seeing the world that others found inconvenient. Your people will not understand your strength, Yarek said quietly. But strength is not always about fighting. You will show them in your own way. She looked at him, eyes wide. You really think so? I know so, he replied. And I will be there to help. Landing in the capital was an experience unlike anything Yarek had imagined. Towers of crystal and metal stretched into the sky, connected by bridges that glowed with energy. The streets were alive with citizens, some curious, some wary of the human who had chosen the least admired princess. He felt their eyes on him as he followed Leora through the city. Leora's people whispered as they passed. Some sneered. Others were surprised. But Yarek ignored them. His focus was on Leora, who walked beside him with quiet confidence. Though underestimated, she moved with grace and purpose, showing no fear of those who doubted her. In the palace, they were greeted with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Leora's family looked at Yarek with a mixture of suspicion and disbelief. Her sisters, tall and regal, smiled politely, but their eyes betrayed judgment. You chose her, one of the sisters asked, her voice sharp. Of all of us, you chose her. Yarek met her gaze steadily. I chose someone I trust, someone whose strength is not always visible, but is very real. Leora's eyes softened at his words. She had never been defended like this, never seen someone look past appearances and status. For the first time, she felt truly seen. That night, in a small chamber overlooking the city, Leora and Yarek prepared for the days ahead. Discussions of politics, strategy, and alliances would come soon, but for now, there was a moment of quiet. You are brave, Leora said softly, not just in battle, but in your heart. You do not follow what others expect. You see the truth of things. Yarek shook his head. I just know what matters, and I know you matter. That is enough reason to be brave. She smiled, a smile that was full of hope and curiosity. For the first time, she felt that perhaps being overlooked had led her to something far greater, a companion who truly understood her. Outside the window, the city shimmered in the moonlight, a symbol of beauty and power. Inside, a human soldier and a quiet princess began a journey that would test their courage, intelligence, and hearts. Together, they would face challenges that neither could foresee. And together, they would discover the true meaning of strength and partnership. For now, though, they were simply two travelers in a vast universe, learning to trust, learning to rely on each other, and learning that sometimes the most important journeys began with the smallest steps. The palace of Leora's homeworld was unlike any place Yarek had ever seen. Towers of crystal shimmered in the sunlight, and intricate walkways connected gardens that floated above the city. Citizens and courtiers moved with careful precision, their eyes often on Leora and the human soldier at her side. It was a world of beauty and strict rules, and Yarek quickly realized that surviving here would require a different kind of skill. Then on a battlefield, Leora walked beside him, her posture straight but calm. She had explained the basics of her people's hierarchy, but the nuances of court life were far more complex. Courtiers bowed deeply, some whispering behind their hands, others staring openly. Her sisters moved through the halls like queens already, their elegance and confidence undeniable. And yet, Leora remained unassuming, unnoticed by most. Except for the occasional glance filled with disbelief, you must be careful, she said softly as they entered the palace. Some people will try to undermine you or me. They are not used to humans, and they certainly do not expect me to have a companion like you. Yarek nodded. I've dealt with enemies who hide behind words, not just weapons. I can handle it. Their first audience with the royal council was tense. The council was composed of influential leaders, advisors, and her family members. They looked at Yarek with suspicion. Their whispers filled the room like a subtle wind. You have chosen our least admired princess. One counselor said, voice thin and sharp. Why would a human, so esteemed for his courage, choose her? Surely there are others more worthy of honor and attention. Yorick's gaze met the counselor's evenly. Because she is real. She sees clearly, acts wisely, and does not hide behind appearances. That is more important than admiration or status. Murmurs rippled through the room. Some were impressed, others offended. Leora's sisters exchanged glances, their expressions tight. They had expected him to be swayed by beauty, power, or the traditional image of royalty. His choice, simple and direct, had defied all expectations after the council meeting. Leora took Yorick to a quiet balcony overlooking the city. The air was filled with the scent of alien blossoms and the soft hum of distant energy streams. They will try to test me, she said. Some openly, some subtly. My sisters, my advisors. They see me as unimportant. You may face challenges simply because you are human. I do not care what they think. Yorick replied, I care about what is true, and you are capable, smart, and strong. We face it together. She looked at him, gratitude shining in her eyes. For the first time, Leora felt the weight of her family's disregard lifting slightly. Perhaps being underestimated was not a weakness, it was a chance to surprise the world. In the following days, Yorick and Leora were introduced to the duties expected of them. The court was a labyrinth of etiquette, political alliances, and hidden rivalries. Leora's role was largely ceremonial, but her sharp mind allowed her to notice patterns others missed. Yorick observed how she quietly influenced decisions, offering subtle insights during discussions. Often, council members dismissed her suggestions at first, only to later realize their importance. One afternoon, as they walked through a corridor filled with holographic maps, a junior advisor approached. Eyes darting nervously, Princess Leora, he whispered. There are rumors of a plan to weaken your influence in the council. Some members are preparing motions that could make you appear unfit to lead certain initiatives. Leora's brow furrowed, but her voice was calm. Do you know who is behind it? The advisor shook his head. Not yet. They are careful, but you must be cautious. Yorick's hand rested lightly on the hilt of his sidearm. Then we find them before they act. You don't face this alone. That evening, in a quiet chamber, Leora and Yorick went over records and council proceedings. It was a game of patience, observation, and strategy. Leora's knowledge of her people combined with Yorick's tactical mind made them a strong team. They began to identify patterns, who whispered to whom, which decisions were influenced by hidden motives, and who sought to undermine her quietly. You are good at this, Leora said after hours of studying the records. You see connections I might have missed. I've fought battles where missing a single detail could cost lives, Yorick replied. Politics is different, but some skills carry over. Days passed, and subtle tests from the court became more apparent. Courtiers would challenge Leora's ideas publicly, attempting to embarrass her or make her seem incapable. Yorick would quietly support her, not by confrontation, but by asking precise questions, highlighting her points, and making her suggestions impossible to ignore. Slowly, her presence in the court grew stronger, her voice carrying more weight. Even her sisters began to notice. They had assumed she would remain the quiet, overlooked princess. But Leora, with Yorick's guidance and support, was slowly asserting herself. It was a delicate balance, showing strength without anger, wisdom without arrogance. One evening, as they overlooked the city lights, Leora spoke quietly. They will not stop testing me. Even if I succeed today, tomorrow brings new challenges. Yorick nodded. Life is full of challenges. The key is to face them, not run from them. And I will be here to face them with you. She looked at him thoughtfully. Most people underestimate me. They do not see what I can do. You see it clearly, because it's there, he said simply. And it matters more than appearances or popularity. Never forget that. Their bond strengthened as they navigated the political maze. Leora began to trust Yorick's judgment, while he learned to understand the subtle rules of her world. They discovered that patience, observation, and careful strategy could be as powerful as courage and strength in battle. Then, one night, an unexpected event shook the court. A message arrived from a distant sector, warning of a faction planning to exploit a political rift within the palace. They intended to manipulate council members, spread false information, and create chaos that could topple Leora's influence or worse, endanger her life. Leora's eyes were steady as she read the report. They think I am weak. They do not know I am aware. Yorick placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Then we stop them before they act. You are not alone in this. Together, they devised a plan. Leora would attend the council meeting as if unaware, observing reactions and collecting information. Yorick would monitor communications, tracking unusual activity and ensuring their safety. It was a subtle battle, one fought with intelligence and careful timing rather than weapons. The meeting began. Council members spoke politely, some openly challenging her ideas, others pretending to support her while plotting secretly. Leora listened, asking questions that revealed hidden motives. Yorick observed quietly, noting every anomaly and discrepancy. By the end of the session, they had identified the conspirators, a small group of council members, who had underestimated both the princess and her human companion. Leora addressed them calmly, presenting evidence of their manipulation. She did not shout or demand submission, but her reasoning was clear, precise, and undeniable. The conspirators had no choice but to retreat, their plan exposed. The court murmured in astonishment. Yorick watched as Leora's influence grew visibly, even among those who had doubted her. She had turned the test into a victory, not through force, but through intelligence, patience, and quiet determination. Later, as they returned to their quarters, Leora spoke softly. I have learned something important today. Strength is not only about power or skill. Sometimes it is about seeing the truth, acting calmly, and not letting others control your actions. Yorick smiled. And sometimes it is about having someone you trust by your side. Together, you are unstoppable. For the first time, Leora felt the full weight of her potential. She was no longer the overlooked princess, the one dismissed as unimportant. She was a leader in her own right, with a partner who recognized her worth when no one else did. That night, as the city slept under the glowing lights, Yorick and Leora prepared for the future. Challenges would come, political, strategic, and personal, but they had proven that together they could face them. The court, once a place of doubt and ridicule, was slowly becoming a place where Leora's voice carried power and respect. And in the quiet moments, away from whispers and intrigue, Yorick realized something else. In this world of elegance, tradition, and hidden dangers, the human traits of courage, honesty, and loyalty were not only rare, they were revolutionary. In the galaxy, humans could make a difference in ways even advanced civilizations had not imagined. The journey had just begun, and already Leora and Yorick were changing the course of her world, not through war, but through courage, intelligence, and trust in one another. The palace that had once felt like a maze of whispers and shadows now buzzed with tension. Rumors of unrest were spreading across the kingdom. A faction opposed to Leora's growing influence was quietly mobilizing, seeking to destabilize the throne. Yorick and Leora knew that words and subtle strategy might no longer be enough. They had to prepare for a test unlike any they had faced before. Leora stood in the council chamber, her posture calm but alert. Her advisors whispered among themselves, trying to gauge her reaction. Yorick, standing beside her, felt the weight of the room's scrutiny. Every eye seemed to question his presence, doubting whether a human could stand alongside a princess and face the challenges of alien politics and potential violence. They are planning something, Leora said softly. I can feel it. Soon, they will act openly. Yorick placed a reassuring hand on her arm. Then we meet them head-on. We will not be surprised. The first sign of the coup came at dawn. Alarms rang across the city as a group of armed insurgents, supported by a small faction of the palace guard, attempted to seize control of key points in the capital. Fires erupted in the streets, and panic spread among citizens unaccustomed to open conflict. Yorick did not hesitate. We need to secure the palace, he said. Stay close to me. Leora nodded, her expression steady. Together, they moved quickly through the palace corridors. Yorick guided the royal guards, using strategies he had learned in countless battles. Leora, though not trained as a warrior, demonstrated intelligence and quick thinking. directing guards to weak points, finding hidden entrances, and ensuring civilians were safe. The insurgents were skilled, but they had underestimated both the human soldier and the quiet princess. Yorick's combat experience allowed him to anticipate their movements, while Leora's insight into the palace's architecture gave them an advantage. They moved as a team, human strategy and alien intuition working in harmony. At one point, they encountered a group of insurgents blocking the path to the council chamber. Yorick assessed the situation quickly. "We can't fight them head-on, they are too many. Follow me." He led a narrow corridor path that no outsider would know. Leora guided the guards silently, ensuring they remained undetected. Together, they reached a vantage point overlooking the intruders. From there, Yorick directed the defenders with precision, turning the insurgents' own plans against them. But the true test came when the insurgent leader revealed himself, a tall figure with sharp armor and glowing eyes. He had anticipated Leora's presence and sought to capture her alive. The palace trembled with the clash of ideals and power. "You are far from safe, little princess," he sneered. "And yet, here you are, hiding behind your human companion." Leora's eyes did not waver. "I am not hiding," she said firmly. "I am protecting my people, my home, and my future." Yorick stepped forward, placing himself between Leora and the leader. "And I will make sure you fail," he said, voice steady. "No matter how strong you think you are, courage and heart beat fear every time." The battle began in earnest. Yorick moved with the precision of a seasoned warrior, striking, dodging, and using every advantage of the palace's architecture. Leora, though unarmed, directed defenders and citizens, turning knowledge into power. She unlocked gates, guided squads, and provided key information that allowed Yorick to gain the upper hand. It was not brute strength alone that saved them, it was strategy, trust, and adaptability. Humans and aliens together, using their unique skills, proved far stronger than the insurgents had expected. At a critical moment, the insurgent leader cornered Leora in the main hall. His soldiers surrounded her, weapons drawn. Yorick arrived just in time, using a combination of human tactics and the environment to neutralize the threat. Leora, observing the chaos, noticed a weak point in the leader's formation. She shouted instructions to Yorick, who acted instantly. Together, they disarmed and captured the insurgents without unnecessary violence. The palace fell silent. Citizens emerged from hiding, looking at the human soldier and the quiet princess who had faced danger with courage and skill. Leora's sisters, who had doubted her, watched in astonishment as she calmly stood before the council. Having successfully defended the throne, "You have done well," Yorick said softly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Not just in fighting, but in leading. You were brilliant." Leora smiled faintly, but her eyes shone with pride. "We did it together," she said. "You helped me see what I could do when I trusted myself." Word of their victory spread quickly. The citizens who had once overlooked Leora now admired her bravery and intelligence. Yorick's reputation grew even stronger, not just as a warrior, but as a leader capable of guiding allies through challenges beyond combat. The council, humbled by their success, approached Leora with newfound respect. Even her sisters acknowledged her ability, though some still struggled to accept her rise. Leora, however, remained calm. She knew that admiration was not the goal, proving her worth through action, and heart was what mattered. In the quiet moments after the battle, Leora and Yorick walked through the palace gardens. The air was cool and fragrant, filled with the scent of alien flowers that glowed softly in the evening light. "You surprised them all," Leora said, her voice gentle. "I never thought I could. I never realized I had this strength." Yorick smiled. "Strength isn't always obvious. You have courage, intelligence, and heart. Those are the strongest traits a person can have." She looked at him, eyes wide. "Do you really think so?" "I know so," he replied. "And today, you showed everyone else too." For the first time, Leora felt truly confident. The challenges of court intrigue and politics had been a test, but this open confrontation had proven her abilities not just to others, but to herself. She had learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. As night fell, the city settled into an uneasy calm. The insurgents had been captured, their plans exposed. Citizens celebrated cautiously, aware that the world was still fragile, but inspired by the bravery of the princess and her companion. Yorick and Leora watched the city from a high balcony, the lights below flickering like stars brought down to earth. "You humans make a difference in ways I never imagined," Leora said. "Your courage, your loyalty, it changes the world." Yorick chuckled softly. "It's not just humans. You, too, have shown what matters. Together, we are stronger than they expected." Leora smiled, a mixture of relief and pride in her expression. She realized that her past life of being overlooked had prepared her for this moment. She had learned patience, observation, and careful strategy. With Yorick's support, she had turned these qualities into a power that no one could ignore. In that moment, they understood something fundamental: courage, intelligence, and loyalty could triumph over deceit and strength. Humans and aliens, working together, could achieve what neither could alone. The test of valor had ended, but their journey was far from over. They knew new challenges awaited, alliances to strengthen, dangers to face, and lessons to learn. Yet, for the first time, Leora felt confident that she was ready. And Yorick knew that the choice he had made to stand by the least admired princess was more important than any medal or honor he could have received. Together, they had proven that true strength came not from status or appearances, but from heart, courage, and trust. The quiet princess and the human soldier had changed the course of the kingdom that day, and the galaxy would soon take notice. The night deepened, and the stars above shone brightly. In that glow, the figures stood together, ready to face whatever came next. And in their partnership, a lesson echoed clearly: sometimes, the least admired can become the most powerful, when seen and supported by someone who understands their true worth. The city of Leora's homeworld had begun to change. Citizens who once whispered doubts about the quiet princess now watched her with admiration. The coup had revealed not just her courage, but the depth of her intelligence and her ability to lead. And standing beside her was Yorick Hale, the human soldier who had chosen her when no one else believed in her. Together, they had become a symbol of strength, unity, and hope. In the days following the failed coup, Leora addressed the royal council. She spoke with calm confidence, outlining reforms to ensure stability, justice, and equality. Her words were measured, precise, and impossible to ignore. Where once her voice had been overlooked, it now carried weight. Shaping the decisions of the kingdom, Yorick watched her from beside the council table, impressed by her poise. "You've grown so much in so little time," he said softly. Leora smiled, a mixture of pride and humility in her expression. "I only realized what I could do because I had someone who believed in me, someone who reminded me of my strength." He nodded. "You would have found it eventually, but I'm glad I was here to see it." The council was cautious but respectful. Leora's rise was not sudden. She had earned it through intelligence, courage, and careful action. Even her sisters, who had once dismissed her, now recognized her skill. Some struggled with jealousy, others with admiration, but all were forced to acknowledge the quiet princess who had become a true leader. Outside the palace, life continued. Citizens who had once feared instability now moved with renewed confidence. The alliance between humans and Leora's people was strengthening, thanks to Yorick's role in the war and the subsequent defense of the palace. Traders, explorers, and scholars arrived, curious about the human who had changed the course of a kingdom. One morning, Leora and Yorick walked through the palace gardens, now peaceful after weeks of tension. The soft hum of alien insects filled the air, and the glowing flowers swayed gently in the breeze. It was a rare moment of calm, a pause before new challenges emerged. "You've changed everything here," Leora said softly, looking out over the city. "Not just with your actions, but with your presence. Humans, you are different. You see value where others do not, and you act without concern for pride or status." Yorick shrugged lightly. "We all have our strengths. Sometimes it takes being in the right place at the right time to show them, and sometimes it takes seeing the right person to make a difference." She looked at him, eyes reflecting a mixture of warmth and wonder. Then I am grateful you saw me. Their partnership became more than politics. It became a bond built on mutual respect, understanding, and shared experience. Together, they guided the kingdom through reforms, building bridges between factions that had once opposed one another. Yorick's perspective as an outsider provided insight into problems the council had overlooked, while Leora's deep knowledge of her people ensured that every decision was balanced and fair. One evening, as the sun set over the crystal towers, an urgent message arrived. A neighboring world, hearing of the recent turmoil, saw an opportunity to test the kingdom's strength. Their fleets were approaching the borders, not yet in battle, but in a show of force. The threat was real, and the council grew tense. Leora turned to Yorick, her expression calm but determined. This is another test, not just of our strength, but of our unity. Yorick nodded. Then we faced it the way we always have. Together, they organized the defenses, combining human tactics with alien strategy. Leora's insight into political alliances allowed them to negotiate support from neighboring factions, while Yorick trained the Palace Guards in innovative techniques. Together, they transformed what could have been fear into preparation and confidence. When the fleets arrived, the display of power was impressive. Alien ships, advanced and intimidating, lined the horizon. But the defenders of the kingdom were ready. Yorick's strategies, combined with Leora's leadership, created a coordinated defense that was both intelligent and adaptable. The conflict did not erupt into open war. Instead, Leora used diplomacy, leveraging her new influence and the respect she had earned. The neighboring world, impressed by the strength and unity displayed, withdrew their fleets, choosing negotiation over conflict. Victory was achieved not through destruction, but through wisdom and strategy. After the threat passed, celebrations erupted across the city. Citizens filled the streets, cheering for their leaders. Leora's sisters, once rivals, stood beside her, acknowledging her accomplishments. The council offered formal recognition of her leadership, and Yorick was honored not only as a war hero, but as a true partner in shaping the kingdom's future. In the quiet of the palace that evening, Leora and Yorick stood together on the balcony, watching the city glow beneath them. The events of the past months had changed them both. Leora had discovered her own strength, her intelligence, and her ability to lead. Yorick had seen the power of courage, loyalty, and trust in a world far from his own. "You have changed more than just the kingdom," Yorick said quietly. "You've changed the future, and maybe even the galaxy." Leora nodded, her eyes reflecting the lights of the city. "We've changed it together, and there is still more to do. I will not stop learning, not now, not ever. And I want you with me. I wouldn't be anywhere else," he replied. The next weeks were filled with rebuilding, diplomacy, and planning for a stronger future. Leora introduced programs to educate citizens, strengthen alliances, and encourage innovation. Yorick helped train leaders and defenders, sharing strategies that combined human adaptability with alien knowledge. Together, they became symbols of hope, resilience, and collaboration. Even the most skeptical members of the council began to recognize the value of their partnership. Yorick's insights and Leora's wisdom complemented one another perfectly. Where one saw danger, the other saw opportunity. Where one suggested caution, the other found balance and strategy. Together, they made decisions that benefited not only the palace, but the entire kingdom. One evening, as they watched the stars above, Leora spoke softly. "Do you ever think about the day you chose me? When everyone else expected you to choose someone admired, powerful, or glamorous?" Yorick smiled, eyes on the distant stars. "I remember, and I do not regret it. I chose someone who mattered, someone who could change the world not because of what others thought, but because of who she truly was." Leora turned to him, her expression warm. "Then it was the right choice. For both of us, and for everyone here." The city below them was alive with light and energy, a testament to their efforts. Citizens no longer whispered doubt, they celebrated courage, intelligence, and the power of trust. The quiet princess had become a respected leader, and the human soldier who had chosen her had become more than a hero. He was a symbol of humanity's potential to inspire, protect, and changed worlds. In the weeks that followed, other kingdoms and civilizations took notice. Humans, once seen as simple outsiders, were now recognized as capable allies. The bond between Leora and Yarok became a story told across star systems, a tale of courage, wisdom, and unexpected partnership. For Leora, the journey had transformed her life. She was no longer overlooked. She had proven that strength came in many forms through intelligence, courage, compassion, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. For Yarok, the experience had reinforced a simple truth: humanity's greatest gift was its heart, its loyalty, and its ability to see value where others did not. Together, they had faced war, intrigue, betrayal, and danger, and they had emerged stronger. Their partnership, built on mutual respect and trust, had changed not just the kingdom, but the very perception of humans among the stars. And as the sun set over the crystal towers, painting the city in gold and silver, Leora and Yarok stood side by side. The journey that had begun with a battlefield choice had grown into a new Aryan era of hope, unity, and the undeniable power of courage, intelligence, and heart. The galaxy was vast, filled with challenges yet to come. But one truth had become clear: with trust, wisdom, and courage, even the quietest voice could change the world. And even the least admired could become the most powerful when seen for who they truly were. And so, a new era began, one guided by the quiet princess and the human soldier who had chosen her. A story that would inspire generations across worlds. A testament to what humanity could achieve when it acted with heart, courage, and vision.